The Xerion research vessel, Emerald Tides, drifted through the void, its smooth, vine-like hull pulsing with photosynthetic energy. The ship was a living thing, grown rather than built, its corridors lined with bioluminescent amber veins that pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves. Commander Xerion stood at the observation deck, his four jointed fingers resting against the organic glass. Beyond it, the derelict floated in silence, a relic from a forgotten age. It was human. Ursek, the lead xenobiologist, approached with a scanner woven from living fibers, its tendrils twitching as it processed data. "The structure is ancient," he murmured, his voice a soft, melodic hum. Fal. Yet its cryogenic systems remain functional. Xerion's crest of emerald fronds rippled in unease. Humans were a myth now, a cautionary tale whispered among the younger species. They had been reckless, violent, fragmented. The galactic consensus had deemed them too unstable for integration. And then, they had simply vanished, yet here one was. The derelict's hull was pitted with micrometeorite scars, its design angular and brutal compared to the Xerion's flowing architecture. It bore no markings, no insignia, just a serial number etched into its side, nearly erased by time. "Shall we wake it?" Ursek asked. Xerion hesitated. Protocol demanded caution, but curiosity was a hunger even the most disciplined mind could not ignore. The cryopod hissed as its seals broke, releasing a plume of frozen vapor. Inside lay a figure, human, male, clad in a blackened exosuit that had fused with his skin in places. His face was gaunt, his dark hair streaked with frost. Then his eyes snapped open. Ursek recoiled. The human's gaze was wrong, too sharp, too aware. The man exhaled a slow, deliberate breath and sat up. His movements were fluid, controlled, as if the centuries of sleep had done nothing to dull his reflexes. His fingers flexed, testing the air, before settling on the edge of the pod. "You're not human," he said. His voice was rough, unused, but there was no fear in it. Only assessment. Xerion stepped forward, his fronds stiffening in a display of authority. "I am Commander Xerion of the Xerion Research Fleet. You are aboard the Emerald Tides." The human's lips twitched. Not a smile, a predator recognizing prey. "Captain Daniel Torres," he said. "United Earth Defense Corps." Ursek's scanner chirped, a warning. The human's vitals were impossible. His heart rate was slow, too slow. His muscle density suggested enhancements beyond natural evolution. His neural activity, "Commander," Ursek whispered. "His brain is rewriting itself." Torres tilted his head, as if listening to something they couldn't hear. Then he stood, and the lights flickered. The Emerald Tides shuddered, its organic systems recoiling as if struck. The human's eyes gleamed in the dimming bioluminescence. "You shouldn't have woken me," he said softly. And the ship screamed. These Emerald Tides convulsed. Yellow-green luminescence pulsed erratically through the chamber's vein, like conduits, casting jagged shadows across the walls. The ship's organic architecture recoiled, its living metal groaning under an unseen pressure. Xerion's fronds flared in alarm, his neural tendrils instinctively sensing with the vessel's distress signals. Intrusion, corruption, fear. The ship's diagnostics flooded his mind, a cascade of warnings in bioluminescent glyphs. Something was rewriting its systems, something human. Ursek stumbled back, his scanner screeching as it overloaded. The readings made no sense. Torres' bio signature wasn't just adapting to the present, it was evolving. Neural pathways reforged themselves in real time, synapses firing with a precision no Xerion mind could match. His muscles, already dense from centuries of cryo-stasis, now thrummed with a latent energy that defied their scans. And his eyes, they burned, not with the soft glow of Xerion bioluminescence, but with something colder, sharper, the gaze of a predator who had slept through empires and woken hungry. Torres took a step forward, the deck plating Elars writhed beneath his boots, the ship's living alloy recoiling as if scalded. Ursek's voice cracked. "Commander, his neural patterns. They're sensing with our systems." Serwin hissed, his own neural tendrils lashing in denial. Impossible, Xerion technology was symbiotic, attuned only to their biology. No outsider could, deep, resonant, like the slow beat of a war drum. It thrummed through the chamber, vibrating in the roots of their bones. The human's heartbeat, too strong, Torres exhaled, and the air itself seemed to thicken. "You dug me out of a graveyard," he murmured. His voice was rough, layered with the weight of centuries. "Did you even ask why I was buried?" The lights dimmed further. Shadows stretched like claws. Ursek's scanner finally shattered, its organic circuits bursting in a spray of emerald sparks. The last reading flickered before dying for COGI-TV, ACMLATON's 87%. Torres smiled, and the ship screamed. The scream was not sound. It was something deeper, something as older, a vibration that slithered through the ship's living veins, a resonance that made the walls shudder like a dying beast. The Xerion's bioluminescent panels flickered, their soft yellow, green glow stuttering into erratic pulses, as if the vessel itself was struggling to comprehend the violation. Serwin's neural tendrils coiled tight against his skull, his instincts screaming at him to retreat, to sever the connection before the infection spread. But it was too late. The human's presence had already rooted itself into their systems. Tendrils of foreign thought weaving through the ship's organic circuitry like invasive vines. Ursek staggered back, his emerald plating rippling with distress. His secondary eyes, small, clustered sensors along his jawline, twitched wildly as they tried to process the impossible. "Hez, rewriting the synaptic pathways," he hissed, voice trembling. "Not just interfacing, Kiev assimilating." Torres exhaled again, slow and deliberate, and the temperature in the chamber dropped. Frost spider-webbed across the floor, creeping toward the Xerion's feet. His pupils, dilated from centuries of darkness, now reflected the dimming glow of their failing lights, black pools swallowing the last remnants of illumination. "You thought I was a relic," he murmured. His voice was a blade wrapped in velvet, each word precise, deliberate, "A frozen corpse for your studies." His fingers flexed, and the ship's living metal groaned beneath him, warping under an unseen pressure. "But you didn't stop to wonder why my people buried me." Zerwin's mind raced. The human wars of old had been brutal, chaotic things, wars fought with crude kinetics and fission fire, wars that had scared their own world beyond recognition. But this was something else. Ursek's data pad convulsed in his grip, its organic screen distorting before dissolving into static. The last coherent symbols burned into the dying display. "Sor, BOOGXL ovirate edetected, sor hes TNT egirate ion iamient." Torres tilted his head, as if listening to a voice only he could hear. Then, with terrifying gentleness, he pushed, and the ship bent. The walls contorted, the smooth, vine-like architecture of the Xerion vessel twisting like a living thing in agony. Amber energy conduits burst, their photosynthetic cells rupturing in sprays of luminous fluid. The air itself thickened, heavy with the scent of ozone and something metallic, fire blood, Serwin realized. The ship was bleeding. Ursek collapsed to his knees, his neural interface cables snapping free in a shower of sparks. "Is not just awake," he gasped. "His evolved." Torres took a step forward, and the lights went out in the darkness. Only his heartbeat remained, a slow, rhythmic pulse that echoed through the ship's bones. Too strong, and getting closer. The darkness was alive. Serwin's bioluminescent markings flickered in distress, casting eerie green shadows across the shuddering walls. The ship groaned around them, its organic architecture convulsing, as if something deep within its veins had been torn. The air tasted of copper and burning sap, the scent of ruptured photosynthetic conduits thick in his throat. Ursek's voice was a ragged whisper, barely audible over the creaking of stressed biometal. "Has rewriting the ship's neural pathways." Serwin's spines flattened against his back. That was impossible. The Xerion's technology was alive, grown from symbiotic organisms, not programmed, yet the evidence pulsed around them in waves of malfunctioning energy. The amber veins of the ship's circulatory system dimmed, then flared erratically, their rhythmic pulse now a stuttering, a rhythmic spasm. And then silence, a single, resonant thud, echoed through the corridor. Torres emerged from the blackness like a specter given form. His body was wreathed in the dying emerald glow of the ship's failing systems, his outline hallowed in fractured light. His eyes, once merely human, now burned with an eerie, depthless luminescence. Ersek's neural tendrils twitched involuntarily, recoiling from the sight. His bio-signature. Wore it synchronizing with the ship. First Torres tilted his head, listening to something beyond their perception. His fingers flexed, and the walls shuddered in response, the biomechanical plating rippling like muscle under skin. Serwin had seen many horrors in his cycles of command, void-born predators, rogue AI, the cold calculus of war. But this was different. This was violation. The ship was theirs, a living extension of the Xerion's will. Yet now it answered to a stranger. Torres exhaled, and the air itself seemed to thicken, charged with an energy that prickled against Zerwin's scales. A whisper of movement. Rebecca McKay stepped forward, her stance firm despite the chaos. Her gaze locked onto Torres, unflinching. "You're still in there," she said, voice steady. "Aren't you?" Torres' lips curled, not a smile, but something older. Something that spoke of centuries buried in the dark. The ship breathed with him. The lights returned. Not the warm, pulsing glow of Xerion biotech, but something colder. Sharper, the walls hummed, their vine, like structures hardening into rigid angles, their organic curves reforged into brutal efficiency. The amber energy webs flickered, then stabilized into a harsh electric blue. Ersek made a choked sound. Hes not just controlling it. Hes remaking it. Torres turned his head, and the ship turned with him. Serwin finally understood they hadn't awakened a relic. They had unleashed a ghost, and the ghost had learned to haunt metal instead of flesh. The chamber pulsed with tension, thick as the organic mist curling from the walls. Serwin's bioluminescent veins flickered erratically, his neural frills twitching in distress. His people had studied countless species, dissected civilizations, and cataloged their weaknesses, yet nothing in the annals of Xerion science had prepared him for this. A human who bent technology like clay. Torres stood motionless, his silhouette framed by the ship's shifting architecture. The once fluid Xerion infrastructure now mirrored his will, sleek, angular, stripped of its organic softness. The air smelled of ozone and something sharper, something of human, the acrid bite of reactivated circuitry, the ghost of old wars lingering in dormant systems. Ersek's tendrils coiled tight against his thorax, his primary eyes dilated with horrified fascination. His secondary limbs trembled as he analyzed the data streaming across his HUD. "The conversion isn't superficial," he murmured, voice thin. "Hes rewriting the ship's fundamental energy matrix. Our photosynthetic conduits, they're rejecting their own protocols." McKay didn't flinch. She stepped closer, her boots clicking against the newly hardened floor. The Xerion had assumed her role was ceremonial, a relic awakened alongside Torres for context. But her gaze was too sharp, her posture too deliberate. She wasn't just a historian, she was a soldier. And she recognized what the aliens did not. Torres wasn't merely interfacing with the ship. He was remembering. Centuries of cryo-sleep had sanded away the edges of his humanity, but not the instincts. Muscle memory buried deep in his synapses flared to life. The grip of a rifle, the weight of command, the silent calculus of survival. The ship responded in kind, its systems aligning with the rhythm of his breath, his pulse. Serwin's mandibles clicked in agitation. This wasn't supposed to happen. The human was a specimen, a curiosity to be examined and archived. Yet now, the very walls of his vessel obeyed the creature. The thought sent a ripple of primal unease through his neural web. Predators did not belong in the heart of the hive. Outside the observation chamber, the corridor lights stuttered, then flared blue. A distant hum vibrated through the deck, the sound of engines changing. Not Xerion. Not anymore. Torres tilted his head, as if listening to a voice only he could hear. His fingers twitched, and a console, once a living, pulsing mass of biotech, shuddered, its surface solidifying into cold, human steel. Arsik made a sound like a dying vine. "High Commander, we must." Serwin silenced him with a raised claw. His mind raced. They could attempt to sever the connection, purge the human's influence, but at what cost? The ship's systems were now an amalgam of two technologies, two wills. Tearing Torres free might cripple them both. And then there was McKay. She hadn't taken her eyes off Torres. There was no fear in her expression, only recognition. "You built this," she said softly, not to the Xerion, but to the ghost in the machine. "Didn't you?" Torres exhaled. The ship exhaled with him, the lights dimmed. For the first time in 300 years, the Indomitable woke fully. And it remembered its name. The Indomitable breathed. Not in the way of Xerion vessels, those slow, photosynthetic pulses of energy that mimicked the rise and fall of tides. No, this was something deeper, something older. The ship's systems, once a seamless fusion of human steel and Xerion biotech, now thrummed with a rhythm that made the air itself vibrate. The walls, once smooth with organic curvature, rippled with sudden, jagged edges, like a beast unsheathing its claws. Arsik stumbled back, his emerald frills flattening against his skull. His scanner pulsed erratically, its readings a mess of conflicting data. The human ship wasn't just adapting, it was rewriting. Torres stood at the center of it all, his fingers still pressed against the console. His eyes, once sharp with the alertness of a soldier, had gone distant, unfocused, as if he were listening to something the rest of them couldn't hear. McKay didn't move. She watched him with the stillness of a predator assessing its next strike. Serwin's claws flexed. His ship, his CC's command, was no longer his. The Indomitable had woken, and it recognized its master. And its master was not Xerion, a low hum built in the walls, resonating through the deck plating. The lights flickered, then steadied into a harsh, unwavering glow, human light, not the soft bioluminescence of Xerion tech. The air tasted different, sharper, charged. Arsik's voice was a whisper. "High Commander, the core." Serwin didn't need to check the readings to know. The ship's power signature had shifted, no longer the steady pulse of photosynthetic energy, but something far more volatile. Something human. Torres exhaled. The ship exhaled with him. A console flared to life, its display scrolling lines of text in a script no Xerion could read. McKay stepped forward, her fingers hovering over the symbols. "Emergency protocols," she murmured. "His pulling them from deep storage." Arsik's frills twitched. "What does that mean?" McKay didn't answer. Her gaze locked onto Torres, and then, for the first time since his awakening, Torres smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. The ship shuddered. Deep within its bowels, something long dormant, unlocked. The Xerion had assumed the Indomitable was a relic, a forgotten warship from a bygone era, its secrets buried beneath centuries of dust. They were wrong. The humans hadn't just built a ship. They'd built a Zev tomb, and now, the dead were waking up. The Indomitable groaned like a living thing, its ancient bones creaking under the strain of awakening systems. The air thickened with the scent of ozone and something older, burnt metal, lubricant long since dried, the ghost of gunpowder. The Xerion had assumed the ship was dead. A relic, a hollow carcass of human ambition. They were wrong. The lights flickered, then steadied into a deep, arterial red. Emergency lighting, the kind meant for war. Torres stood at the center of it all, his breathing slow, deliberate. His pupils had dilated, black swallowing blue, as if his body were adjusting not just to the light, but to something deeper. To the ship's pulse, to the hum of reactors stirring from centuries of slumber. Ersec's frills flared, his bioluminescent veins pulsing in erratic bursts. His scanner chimed frantically, its readings nonsensical spikes in neural activity, energy signatures that defied Xerion understanding. The human wasn't just awake, he was sensing. McKay took a step back, her fingers curling into fists. She knew that look, she'd seen it in the old vids, in the classified briefings about the first deep sleep volunteers. The ones who came back changed. "Captain," she said, voice low. "Talk to me." Torres didn't respond. Not with words, the ship did it for him. A console to their left erupted in a cascade of holographic schematics, ship layouts, weapon diagnostics, damage reports from battles fought centuries ago. The data scrolled too fast for the Xerion to parse, but McKay's eyes locked onto one symbol, a black sun wreathed in flame. Contingency Omega. Her stomach dropped. Serwin's claws flexed, his emerald carapace darkening with unease. "Explain," he demanded, the organic fibers of his command suit tightening in response to his agitation. McKay swallowed. "You wanted to study him. To see what centuries of cryo did to a human." She gestured to the screens, to the ship's groaning infrastructure. "Congratulations. You're about to find out." Torres exhaled, long, slow, and the ship exhaled with him. Then the first alarm blared. Deep in this Indomitable's belly, something is moved. Ersec's scanner screeched, its luminescent display overloading. "Life signs?" he hissed. "Dozens of them. No hundreds." The Xerion had assumed the ship was empty. They were wrong. The humans hadn't just built a warship. They'd built a EV coffin, and now the dead were climbing out. The Das Indomitable shuddered, not from impact, but from something far worse. From the acid within, the ship's organic, metal ribs groaned, as if something vast and ancient had taken a breath after centuries of stillness. The Xerion's luminescent lights flickered. Their photosynthetic power cells, dimming as though drained by an unseen force. The air itself thickened, humming with a frequency that made Ersec's chitinous plates vibrate in discomfort. Serwin's primary eyes dilated, his secondary set narrowing to slits. His species had evolved to sense electric fields, to track the pulse of living machinery. But what he felt now was wrong. It wasn't just Torres' vitals spiking on the screens. It was the ship, the walls, the conduits, even the air recyclers, all of it thrummed with a resonance that matched the human's rising heartbeat. A symbiosis. The realization struck him like a plasma round. The Indomitable wasn't just a vessel, it was an extension of the man they had woken. Ersec's scanner convulsed in his grip, its vine, like tendrils recoiling as the display overloaded. The cryopods. His voice was a rasp, barely audible over the rising whine of the ship's reactors. "They're activating." McKay didn't move. Didn't blink. Her face was pale, her fingers curled into fists so tight her knuckles stood out like bone shards. "You should have left him sleeping," she whispered. Torres exhaled, a slow, deliberate sound. And the ship exhaled with him. Then the first pod hissed open. Ersec's scanner shattered, its glass cracking as the energy surge spiked. The pod's seal split like a wound, yellow, green emergency lights casting jagged shadows across the chamber. Inside, something stirred, a hand pale, skeletal, its fingers twitching emerged from the mist. The Xerion had expected decay, expected weakness. They were wrong. The figure that rose from the pod were wrong, in ways their biology couldn't comprehend. Its skin was too smooth, its veins too dark, threading beneath the surface like cracks in ice. Its eyes opened, black, endless, and the ship's lights dimmed further, as if the very energy in the room was being consumed. Torres took a step forward. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, measured. "Stand down." The figure turned its head, slowly, deliberately, and smiled. Ersec's carapace tightened. That smile wasn't human, it was too wide, too sharp, the teeth too many. Then the second pod opened, and the third, and the Indomitable woke in full. Serwin's claws flexed, his instincts screaming at him to run. This wasn't a study. This wasn't an experiment. This was an as eclipse, and the humans weren't the ones trembling in the dark. The air in the chamber thickened, heavy with the scent of ozone and something older, something metallic, like rusted iron left too long in the rain. The Xerion's bio-luminescent lights flickered, their usual steady pulse now erratic, as if the ship itself recoiled from the figures emerging from the pods. Arsek's mandibles twitched, his neural tendrils recoiling beneath his carapace. He had studied human physiology for cycles. He had dissected their histories, their wars, their fragile mortality. But this was wrong. The humans before him were not weakened by time. They were ours forged by it. The first figure, the one with the too wide smile, tilted its head. Its joints moved with a liquid smoothness that defied Xerion biomechanics. No click of carapace, no whisper of chitin. Just silent, predatory grace. Torres didn't flinch. He stood like a blade driven into the earth, unyielding. "You're not supposed to be awake," he said, voice low. The figure exhaled, a sound like wind through dead trees. "No," it agreed. "We're not." Serwin's claws dug into the organic plating beneath him. His ship's systems whispered warnings into his neural link. Their usual melodic hum now a discordant screech. The humans' bio-signatures were Xerion, their heartbeats too slow, their cells too efficient, too hungry. Arsek's scanner pulsed in his grasp, its yellow-green display flickering with corrupted data. "Their metabolic rates," he hissed. "They're burning through energy reserves, but their cellular decay is negative." Torres finished for him, eyes never leaving the figures. "They don't degrade, they adapt." One of the awakened humans turned its gaze to Arsek. Its pupils dilated, swallowing the light. "You wanted to study us," it said, voice layered, too many tones at once, like an echo in a hollow place. Arsek's tendrils stiffened. This wasn't speech, it was resonance. Vibrations tuned to bypass auditory receptors entirely, vibrating straight into the marrow. The Xerion had assumed cryo-sleep would leave humans brittle, broken. Instead, it had made them sharp. The third figure moved not a step, but a shift, its outline blurring for a fraction of a second before reforming closer. Serwin's combat reflexes screamed. His ship's defenses prickled, photosynthetic energy cells surging in response to the threat. The human was already beside him, its breath cold against his carapace. "You thought we were relics," it murmured. "Fossils to be examined." Serwin's spines flattened. His ship's organic architecture recoiled, vines of living metal retracting as if burned. The human smiled again, and the lights went out. In the darkness, something as moved. Arsek's scanner shattered in his grip, its bioluminescent fluids spilling like emerald blood. He could hear them now. The humans, not with his auditory pits, but in the pest pressure of the air. The way the darkness itself seemed to breathe in time with their steps. Torres hadn't moved. His silhouette was a cutout against the black, his pulse steady. "They're not monsters," he said, as if reading the terror coiling through the Xerion ranks. "They're just old." The first human laughed, a sound like glass breaking underwater. "Old," it repeated. "Yes." Then the emergency lights flared back to life, revealing the humans standing exactly where they had been before the blackout. As if they had never moved at all. Serwin's neural link shrieked with damage reports. His ship's energy reserves had dropped by 37% in 3 seconds. The humans hadn't touched a single system. They had simply taken. Arsek's voice was a whisper. "What are they?" Torres finally turned to look at him. His expression was unreadable. "Survivors." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Serwin's neural link pulsed erratically, his ship's organic architecture writhing in distress. The humans hadn't attacked. Not in any way the Xerion understood. They hadn't fired weapons, hadn't breached systems with brute force. They had simply existed, and in doing so, had siphoned power from the very veins of the ship like roots draining nutrients from soil. The ancient humans stood motionless, their forms still half shrouded in the dim emergency lighting. Their eyes, too dark, too reflective, tracked the Xerion with a patience that bordered on predatory. Ersic's frills trembled, his bioluminescent markings flickering in distress. His mind raced through every xenobiological database, every scrap of research on human physiology. None of it accounted for this. Torres hadn't moved. His stance was relaxed. But there was a tension in him now, something coiled ready. He watched the Xerion with the quiet focus of a soldier assessing a battlefield. One of the ancients tilted its head, the movement unnervingly precise. "You woke us," it said. Its voice was layered, as if multiple throats spoke in unison. Serwind forced his neural tendrils to steady. "Woof," his translator faltered, struggling with the harmonics. "We sought knowledge." The human's lips peeled back, revealing teeth too white, too even. "Knowledge has a price." Ersic's frills flattened against his skull. The air in the chamber had grown heavier, pressing against his exoskeleton like a physical weight. He could feel the humans now, not as biological entities, but as presences, vast and unfathomable. Torres exhaled, slow and deliberate. "They're not going to hurt you," he said, though his fingers twitched near the sidearm at his hip. "Unless you give them a reason." Serwin's neural link spat warnings. His ship's energy reserves were still dropping. The humans weren't even trying, they were just there. And the ship's power bled into them like water into parched earth. One of the ancients stepped forward. The deck plating groaned under its weight, though its frame was lean, almost gaunt. It reached out, fingers brushing the nearest wall. The living metal of the Xerion ship recoiled, curling away from the contact like a wounded vine. "You built your machines from life," the human murmured. "We remember when we did the same." Ersic's breath caught. That was impossible. Human technology had never exhibited true symbiosis, not like Xerion architecture. The human's fingers flexed, the wall shuddered, its organic fibers darkening, withering. Ersic's scanner screamed. The ship's energy signature was being rewritten, the pathways rerouted. Torres' voice cut through the rising panic. "Stop." The ancient human turned its head. For the first time, something like amusement flickered in its hollow eyes. "You command us." Torres didn't flinch. "I'm asking." A beat. Then, slowly, the human withdrew its hand. The wall's bioluminescence flickered back to life. Though the damage remained, a blackened scar where flesh, like metal, had died. Serwin's neural link pulsed with a new alert. The ship's core was destabilizing, whatever the humans were doing. It wasn't just draining power, it was altering the fundamental balance of the vessel's organic systems. Ersic's frills twitched in realization. "They're not just absorbing energy," he whispered. "They're adapting to it." Torres' jaw tightened. He knew the ancients were evolving, and the Xerion had just handed them a ship full of fuel. The Xerion ship groaned around them, its living architecture convulsing as if in pain. The walls pulsed irregularly, their usual emerald glow now fractured by streaks of sickly black where the ancient humans' touch had seared through the organic circuitry. The air smelled of scorched chlorophyll and something deeper, more metallic, like blood from a wound that refused to close. Serwin's neural link burned with warnings. Systems were failing in cascades, not from damage, but from Dela's repurposing. The ship's energy webs, once flowing in harmonious golden, green streams, now twisted into jagged forks, rerouted toward the chamber where the humans stood. The ancient ones were not merely draining power. They were rewriting the ship's biology to serve them. Ersic's frills flared in horrified fascination. His scanner chimed relentlessly. Its readings nonsensical, energy signatures fluctuating between Xerion photosynthetic resonance and something else, something older, hungrier. The humans were not just surviving the ship's defenses. They were consuming them. Torres remained still, his stance deceptively relaxed. But his eyes sharp, calculating, tracked every flicker of movement from the ancients. He had seen this before, or something like it. Not in battle records, not in training. In S memory, the way the oldest human warriors had adapted during the Long War, turning enemy weapons into extensions of their own will. One of the ancients tilted its head, its hollow eyes locking onto Ersek. The scientist recoiled as if struck. There was no malice in that gaze. No hatred, only a terrible, indifferent curiosity. The same way a predator might study prey before deciding whether it was worth the kill. Then the ship lurched. A deep, resonant thrum shuddered through the deck, followed by a sound like tearing sinew. The ceiling above them split, revealing the pulsing core of the vessel's main energy conduit, a massive, vein-like structure throbbing with yellow-green light. The ancient human nearest to it reached up, its fingers twitching as if in recognition. Torres moved before Serwin could react. He stepped between the ancient and the conduit, his voice low but carrying the weight of command. No. The ancient paused. For a heartbeat, the chamber held its breath. Then the human spoke, not in words, but in a vibration that resonated through the ship's organic framework, a frequency that made the Xerions' bones ache. The conduit above them spasmed, its light dimming, then flaring violently as raw energy surged toward the ancient's outstretched hand. Ersek's scanner shattered in his grip. Serwin's neural link screamed a final, desperate warning before overloading. The ship was no longer theirs. It was learning a new master. And the humans, it seemed, were Farah's very good teachers. The ship breathed. That was the only way Serwin could describe it. The living vessel, once a seamless extension of Xerion will, now pulsed with an alien rhythm. The walls shuddered, veins of bioluminescent energy flickering erratically as the ancient human's resonance rewrote the ship's neural pathways. The air tasted metallic, charged with the scent of ozone and something deeper, something vold, like the first breath after a long sleep. Ersek staggered back, his emerald skin dulled by the dimming light. His fingers flexed around the shattered remnants of his scanner, the organic glass crumbling like brittle leaves. This isn't possible, he whispered, but the words were swallowed by the ship's groaning infrastructure. Torres hadn't moved. He stood between the ancient and the conduit, his stance unyielding, though his knuckles were white where they gripped his rifle. Serwin recognized the tension in his frame, not fear, but calculation. The human was waiting, watching, and then the ancient Zeva looked at them. Its eyes, once clouded by cryo-stasis, were now sharp, Vav-aware. The gaze swept over the Xerion like a physical weight, lingering on their biotech interfaces, their pulsing energy nodes, the way their limbs trembled with the ship's distress. There was no malice in that look, no triumph, only a recognition. A shudder ran through the deck. The conduit above them convulsed one final time before stabilizing, its light shifting from sickly yellow, green to a deep, steady amber. The change rippled outward, racing through the ship's organic circuitry like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. The neural link in Serwin's skull, silent since its overload, flickered back to life, but it was different now. Warmer, slower. Instead of the crisp, immediate data flow of Xerion control, the connection felt considered. Deliberate, as if the ship itself was thinking before responding. Ersek's voice was hoarse. It's interfacing with our systems, not overriding them, adapting them. Torres exhaled sharply, finally lowering his weapon. Yeah, that's what we do. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Serwin's spines flattened against his back as the truth settled over him. The humans hadn't just survived the centuries. They'd evolved within them. Cryostasis hadn't weakened their kind. It had honed them. Their biology, their neural patterns, their very presence, resonated with a compatibility the Xerion had never anticipated. Their ship wasn't being stolen, it was being ours, understood. And in that moment, Serwin realized the true depth of his error. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as relics. But relics didn't teach, they didn't learn. And they certainly did make living warships breathe For the first time, the ship breathed, not in the mechanical, pulsing rhythm of Xerion bio-engines, nor the sterile hum of standard galactic drives. This was something deeper, something alive. The walls thrummed with a resonance that hadn't existed before, a low, steady vibration that seeped into the bones of every being aboard. The air tasted different, charged, electric, as if the very molecules had realigned to accommodate the presence of the humans. Serwin stood motionless, his neural tendrils flickering in involuntary response to the shift. His people had built this vessel, grown it from seeded organic alloys, nurtured its systems with photosynthetic energy webs. It was theirs. The ship listened to the humans. Not in the way a machine obeyed commands. Not even in the way a Xerion bioship responded to its bonded pilot. No, this was something else entirely. The humans moved, and the ship adjusted. McKay reached out, fingertips brushing a control node, and the interface rippled like liquid, reshaping itself to her touch. Torres stepped forward, and the corridor lights brightened ahead of him, dimming in his wake as if the vessel itself was tracking his path. Ersik's frills trembled, his bioluminescence flickering between emerald and a sickly, uncertain yellow. His scanner pulsed uselessly in his grasp, its readings nonsensical, its diagnostics overwritten by the sheer wrongness of what was happening. "This isn't integration," he whispered. "This is symbiosis." Serwin's spines pressed flat against his back. The humans weren't just compatible with Xerion technology. They were enhancing it. McKay turned slowly, her gaze locking onto Serwin. There was no triumph in her expression. No gloating, only a quiet, terrifying certainty. "You thought we were relics," she said. "Frozen, forgotten, but you don't understand what cryostasis does to us." Torres flexed his hand, and the ship's energy web pulsed in response, threads of yellow, green light flaring brighter where he stood. "We don't just sleep through the centuries," he said. "We adapt in them. Our cells learn, our nervous systems rewire. And when we wake up," he looked down at his palm, where the ship's energy had begun to coil around his fingers like a living thing. "We wake up different." Ersik's scanner clattered to the floor. The implications were too vast, too horrifying to voice. The Xerion had assumed humanity was a dying breed, a species too fragile to survive the uns. But they had been wrong. The humans hadn't just endured, they had evolved. Their bodies had metabolized time itself, turning centuries of stillness into strength. And now they stood here, in the heart of a Xerion warship, and the ship knew them. Serwin's mandibles tightened. This wasn't a salvage operation. This wasn't even a first contact. This was of reckoning. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as obsolete. But obsolete things didn't make living ships sing. And as the vessel's pulse thrummed in harmony with the humans' heartbeats, Serwin understood, too late, the fatal error his people had made. They had assumed humanity's story was over. But it had only just begun. The deck beneath Serwin's feet shuddered, not with the mechanical groan of failing systems, but with something deeper, something alive. The ship's luminescent veins flared brighter, pulsing in time with the humans' movements, as if the vessel itself were waking from a long slumber. Ersik's voice was barely a whisper. "They're not just compatible with the ship. They're sensing with it." Serwin's neural tendrils twitched in involuntary distress. He had seen symbiosis before. Xerion warships bonded with their captains, their organic circuitry adapting to a pilot's neural patterns over decades. But this was different. The humans weren't just interfacing with the ship's systems. They were rewriting them. The lead human, Kale, closed his eyes, his fingers still pressed against the command console. The ship's ambient hum deepened, resonating through the chamber like a heartbeat. Then, with a sound like unfurling leaves, the walls shifted. Tendrils of living metal peeled back, revealing hidden conduits, dormant weapon arrays, and, most terrifying of all, a vast, pulsing core at the heart of the chamber. It glowed with the same eerie radiance as the human's eyes. Kyle turned to Xerion. "You thought this was your ship." His voice was calm, almost pitying. "But it was never yours. It was waiting." AirSec's scanner, still lying discarded on the floor, suddenly flared to life. Its display flickered wildly before locking onto a single, impossible reading the ship's genetic signature. It matched the human's DNA. Xerion's mind reeled. The implications were catastrophic. The Xerion had scoured the galaxy for derelict vessels, harvesting the remnants of dead civilizations to fuel their empire. But this ship hadn't been abandoned. It had been an eyes asleep. And now its rightful crew had returned. The humans spread out, their movements fluid, instinctive, as if they had walked these halls 1,000 times before. The ship responded to them like a limb obeying a thought, hatches eye-rising open, systems booting without command, weapons charging with a low, hungry whine. Xerion's warriors hesitated, their weapons lowering. They had been trained to fight enemies, not ghosts. Kyle stepped forward, the ship's light casting his shadow long and jagged against the walls. "You have two choices," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Leave. Or learn what happens when something wakes up hungry." A ship groaned, a sound like a great beast stirring. Xerion made his decision. Behind him, his crew did the same. The galaxy had believed humanity extinct, but extinction, it seemed, was just another kind of stasis. And stasis, as the Xerion were now painfully aware, could be broken.